All right. Well, Abbie, Gabe, Oscar, thanks so much for sitting down with us in this very vibey space. We've just tracked a few songs, which sounded really good. And I'm just really excited for the album. So at this point that we're chatting, the album hasn't come out yet, Pure, but we've gotten to listen to some demos and some songs. And I've been telling so many people about it. In fact, I pulled up for a few of my friends, I pulled up the demo of Pure and played it for them. And I'm just a big fan. Lyrically and musically, the vibe of it, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But you were meeting with us, Abbie, just a few weeks ago and chatting with us about the idea behind the album artwork. So I thought that would be a really good place to start conceptually talking about what this record is.
Yeah, the album cover is in front of our house. We actually played with a few different ideas of we actually did a couple different shoots and none of them felt right or true to the album. And so we ended up just doing we had done a whole shoot where we set up the perfect lighting and got the perfect shot, and they're beautiful photos, but it's something about it didn't feel quite right. And we ended up doing a film shoot just in front of our house, took maybe 20 minutes and just captured me in front of our house. And it felt very true to the project because that kind of encapsulates the album. There's not a lot to it. Honestly, the house being in front of our home, I feel like there's a lot of deep layers there that I don't even fully have language for. Just being that this project is my debut thing coming out into the world, and there's a lot of history behind it and a lot of dreaming and a lot of years. But even just the simplicity of this is just our home, and it's just me here at our home.
Yeah, and I think another thing that it represents is just in a house, you cry, you laugh, you eat, you dine, and so we wanted everyone to feel part of that and that history, just an invitation to even our home, our history with history for the Lord with you, and just there's gonna be moments in the album that you're gonna cry, that you're gonna laugh, that you're gonna do both at the same time, and so it's
that home feels,
yes.
Just the ease of home.
Totally. It kind of represents authenticity.
Yes.
All the good and the bad moments and the moments of faith and doubt and everything all combined together.
All of it.
All of it.
Home means so much. I think that's the thing. It's this is my home. Let that mean what it will to you.
Totally. And I think the album really reflects that. We kind of go on this journey with you as well. And since you mentioned this is your debut album, which is really exciting.
Well, it's my debut. There's an album out there in the world. Nobody's allowed to go find it.
We will find it
It's
later.
out there. It's out there. But this is the first thing that I'm proud to put out.
Nice. That's different. We all have demos we're really ashamed of.
Yeah.
Things we've had to call people and say, take that off of YouTube, please.
I've given up. I'm my tagged photos. There's just no.
Oh, no.
There's no way to protect myself. Anyway.
So as you've created the record, what's been your hope for the people that listen to it?
So, do you want to answer? No, you can answer. Okay, I'm down for all of us to answer. But for me, this is the long version of this answer. But years ago, probably when I was I'm 28 now. It was probably when I was not even graduated high school. I was probably 15 or so. I was writing all these really sad songs. All that was coming out of me when I would sit down to create was really kind of sad. And I asked the Lord, I was why am I writing like this? I'm not even intentionally sitting down to write an emo song. It's just what's coming out. And the Lord said, Abbie, your music is going to teach people and give them permission to feel with me.
I love that.
And so that was years ago, and I haven't done I've led worship, and I was in a band with my brother. I've done all these things, but nothing that felt oh, that's what that was for. And this album feels like that. So my hope and prayer is that these songs would give people permission to lean into the whatever it is, the pain or the anxiety or the whatever the stuff is. I have found that the Lord would much rather me be honest. Yep. Being married, I have learned so much about about Jesus and about what he would like in a relationship with me. And it's different because it's human, but it's like the closest thing earthly that we have. And with Gabriel, like, he really just does not care for my half-truth answer to things, like, or for my like, even not for the sake of withholding or being dishonest, but just like, maybe I'm feeling like I'm too much, or I'm like, I don't want to overwhelm you with that. And he actually would like to just hear the whole thing about what's inside of me. And I've found that to be true with the Lord, where he's just like, I'd rather sit down and like actually know where you're at. So I pray that this album does that for people, where they can sit down with God and be like, this is where I'm actually at. And it's the first step to healing, is to say, this is where I'm at. 100%. So.
Man, that's good.
Well,
and I would say too, I want to hear from you guys as well. Too. Yeah. But I think just even for me watching you lead worship, I think that's something that I would like to just confirm in you, that I don't know if it's even tied to a certain lyric or a certain song, that when you lead, there is an intimacy with God that makes me go, oh, I can bear my whole soul to him. So I do definitely see that gift on you. Wow. I don't think it's tied to just a song or an album. I think that's been there for a long time. I think the album definitely puts words to it. Yeah. Which is really good.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from you guys.
I think for the album, because it's like, it's been a dream of your heart. We've worked on, we've thought about it years ago, even started to try.
We even started it,
We even started the idea
of it.
Like probably 3 years ago.
And a couple songs, landed in the album, which is pretty cool. But I just had this idea. I've been thinking about the album a lot. And honesty, the word honesty, within Christian cultures, because, recently me and my wife went through a miscarriage, and it was a really, really hard thing for us. It was the first time I've ever truly experienced loss. And it was in the middle of the album, making the album. And in the middle of the album, there was so much high and so many lows. Like, I remember we came back from a trip, and then also my hand stopped working the first week it was like I had this thing. I was like, what's going on? So it's like thing after thing, and it's like I had the opportunity to do the right Christian thing. He works all things together for, which is true, or I can let God create faith in my heart. And I had this idea of Thomas. Thomas, we call him Doubting Thomas, and the thing about him is like he has to back stigma, but he's one of the only disciples that was able to experience something so true of Jesus. He touched his holes in his hand and in his ribs, because of his honesty. There's an opportunity and an intimacy that he was able to experience with Jesus because he was like, I have to see it.
That's so good.
And I think the album, I want people to have the true honesty. It's like, God, I know you're real, but right now things are a little difficult. And I think in the middle of that, God can actually be God in those situations. So it's like, that's what I want people to get out of it. Like, your honesty is an offering as well. Like when things are dark, I think there's a line on the album that we wrote with Jason Upton. It's like, there's a fragrance in a dark place that when you go through pain on earth, I love what Bill Johnson says. It's like, and you give an offering of praise and thanksgiving to the Lord. It's like, you can't do it in heaven. Angels can't do that. So there's a beauty of choice of like, here it is, Lord, in my dark season.
Man, I love that.
That's so good.
It's so good. And I think, tagging along with Oscar, like, we're in a relationship with God, and a relationship has ups and downs, and obviously God is perfect and he loves us through everything of that, but just the reality of just like the ebb and flow. And I think what this album does, it just kind of like, like I said, there's moments to cry, and there's moments to laugh, and there's moments to like pray for your loved one. There's just opportunity there, and I just feel like a lot of people, specifically like a lot of worship leaders, are gonna listen to this, and they're just gonna encounter the Lord again and find that first love. And I really feel that strongly in my heart that just pastors, worship leaders, just find that true love again in this album.
That's so good. And I think we need to. We get so stuck in like week to week ministry sometimes that we can forget that first love. And there's that fine line of like, even like reading your Bible and spending time with God where that line starts to get blurry between like, am I doing this for my relationship with you, God, or am I doing it to prepare for something at the coming Sunday, which I think leads us into a lot of the lyrics in Pure, the song. So I'd love to hear how that was written, and obviously the heart behind it too.
Yeah. I think any of us could answer.
Yeah. I mean, you could go.
We wrote it with our friend Jesse early, and we were here in Nashville to write for the album. We did like 4 or 5 days of writing, and we sat down with her on like the 3rd day, and every write we approached it slightly differently, but she came in that day and she was like, I have this thing that I've been sitting with for a while, and I felt like I was supposed to save it for you guys, and it's supposed to be for today. And we were like, well, show us. And she played it. She played the chorus, the first chorus, and then the bridge. And we were like, I literally was like,
she was done.
We all were mad. We were like, literally, what? Just leave.
Yeah, she was done. She's like, is that even good? I was like,
she was like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what she said.
She goes, but can't you like hear
Jessie.
like a room of people? And I was like, literally shut
Yes,
up. Like,
absolutely.
stop. It was so good.
Yeah.
And then from that place, we kind of just sat in it for a while. And it's what you said, like that thing of, it just can become such a grind and such a like, you just do the things because it's what you do, because it's, I don't know. It's just, it can become so, not mundane, but like habitual. You just do it.
And I remember, like we started talking about like whenever the Lord encountered us or whenever we met with him for the first time. And I remember sitting in my couch and my dad grabbed an acoustic guitar and he was singing really bad, out of tune. But the Lord met me there, you know? It wasn't about him doing something. It was just me opening my heart and experiencing him there. Yeah. And so I started just, we were just talking. We're all like, man, I remember the Lord when he did this. And then all the lyrics started coming out. And so
Heart song singing out of tune.
The first line.
Yep. Which I used that line to actually encourage a friend of mine who had just gone through, she's not able to sing the way that she used to be. And I just like the idea of like, God doesn't need me to sing the way I used to, it doesn't need my best vocal performance. But just to worship him. I love the simplicity in it. And I think I actually didn't know that you guys wrote it with Jessie too. And she's gone on her journey too of going like, I don't want to write generic, words. I want to write like what's actually like in my heart. And sometimes it might be a little painful to get out, but like I want to be true and honest.
Yes.
I think that song really shows it.
Yeah.
I think even, in the worship space, it just can get sticky and like messy. And when it's your job and when it's what you do day in and day out, it can lose the simplicity of like, why are we like asking the questions like, why do I do this? Not because I'm anointed and not because I have a good voice and not because I've been doing it since I was 12. Like, no, because of a heart posture, because I have to respond. And so just getting back to that place of like, it's even like not like the line, not for anything that I could gain. Like when it's your job and when it's like your career, it's easy to get caught in the like the ladder. How can I like, how do I get to the next thing, or how do I, and there's so many layers to that. Like we could talk about that all day long, but just getting back to the basics is really what we kind of did, I think.
Great.
Yeah.
And Eyes Locked, that's another one we got to shoot today.
Yeah.
And another one of my favorites on the record. Let's talk about that song being written as well. I'd love to know that story.
Yeah.
Well, that one during COVID, we wrote that in 2020.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you're locked out, you can't go out.
You're locked out.
I just bought a house. It was my first house. Bought it right before the lockdown.
Oh, crazy.
So then it was just me and my wife. So we had a 2-bedroom house. In the back house, I'm like, that's going to be the studio. So everything locks out. I was like, oh man, great. I can't invite anyone over. So I'm like, I'm just going to do Zoom rights. So I just started to ask people like, who wants to write? And I met Lindsay Sweat at a camp a couple years before that. So I just texted her. I was like, hey, would you be down to write this week? She's like, sure. Then I had an image of Elissa and Abbie. I was like, I'm just gonna invite them too. I was like, great. So then we just wrote the song
over Zoom. We had never met her. We just hopped on a Zoom call, and she.
But 2020 really changed all of that.
We wrote so many songs in 2020.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, Eyes Locked is one of the only songs on the album that wasn't written for the album. I think it's one of 3 that were like pre-existing. But that was another one where she came in and she was like, I've just been like, I'm staying at my parents' house and, quarantine, and I just have this thing. And I think she played us like part of the first verse and like part of the chorus. And we were like, well, you like basically already wrote it, so we'll just, I guess, help you finish it.
Yeah. Amazing.
It was so special and just easy and simple.
Yep.
Which is also true too.
I love it.
The whole thing, the whole project.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited for it.
Yeah.
Like I said, big fan. And before we end the interview, I think I told you guys already, I like to end with just something real simple. I'd love to chat about something that is inspiring you right now. Podcast or a book or a movie or TV show. It does not have to be Christian. Just anything that is really inspiring to you right now. A lot of people that are watching this interview are worship leaders or creatives at their church. And I think that's another thing too. I mean, you can, as you kind of travel around to churches, you can find that a lot of people are in their own silos and not able to get out and experience. So I would love to give them an opportunity to see like, what are some things creatively that are inspiring each of you?
I guess I can start. I've been super inspired. Honestly, I forgot what the book is called.
What is it called?
Do you remember?
I don't.
It's Rick Rubin's new book.
Yes.
I know it's about creativity.
Something about the artist. No.
Just look up Rick Rubin new book and then you find it. But
enter.
It's so beautiful how he sees music and creativity. Something that really touched my heart. He's like, everyone is creative, even though you're a lawyer, even though you don't feel creative. Internally, your body's creating. You're creating saliva. There's old cells dying and new cells creating. So you're always creating. And so, and something else I love, he talks about being aware, just like and I take it like the Lord's always speaking and the Lord's always inspiring, and it's our ability to open up our ears and to be aware of His voice. And so it could be just like, the tree blowing, and you could either walk past that or you could take that in and be like, oh my gosh, the trees are blowing and I feel you, Lord. Thank you so much for this day. It's just being aware of like everyday stuff. So
so good.
Yeah,
I think aware of what God's doing.
Exactly.
There are a lot of people out there that say I'm not creative. They make that statement, which I think is one of the. I think it's such a terrible statement to make about ourselves.
Yes.
Because we're just saying this thing over ourselves, like no, the Creator of all creators made me.
Yes.
In His image.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we are all creatives.
100%.
So I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's great. And also, I meant to talk about too, which we can chat about this right now. Speaking of the creative aspect of things, I love the production on the album.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so was it the two of you that produced, or the three of you, or like who kind of took the lead on production?
It was like collective.
Yeah.
I think we have a friend named Blake Kanika who's also part of the production team. But it was a lot of fun. I think the initial idea is within today's sound of music. It's so electronic, and there's so much to it. And it's like I feel like at times, in the moment, it felt like I was missing soul. Yeah. When you hear a good piano player, it's like, or like for example, when a friend makes you a cup of coffee, it's not the cup of coffee from down the street, but you feel the soul.
Yep.
Of the coffee, even though it's not up to par, quote unquote.
Yeah.
It's like I wanted the music to feel that way. So a lot of the takes were the first takes of the piano.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
A lot of the
demos even.
We took some, I think for Too Good, the acoustic guitar was from the demo. Some of the first takes were, from your vocals, we comped that all together.
Yeah, even the comping.
So we recorded everything, and I was like, man, I just love the idea of like, here's an instrument, I gotta get a cable, plug it into a preamp. Instead of like, you do it virtually.
Yep.
So it's like, I think about 85 to 90% of the album is real
like analog
instruments. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of started creating from it. And we want it to be so simple because a lot of times with worship music, when you send things over to mix, there's like 100 tracks. And in reality, from a mixer standpoint, like you can't really. What do you do with 100 tracks?
Yeah.
So we're like, let's actually make it so bare. Like there was a time that we're just going through it. We're like, I would just hit mute on some tracks because we're just paint. And if it did nothing to the song, I would just delete it. Because it's
That's
like
great.
you don't want you didn't want the like we wanted to like even from the purity of the album, song called Pure, I was like, I don't want anything to be hidden. I want everything to be forward.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the idea of the album. It was a lot of fun. We rented an upright piano, which I ended up keeping because I love so much.
Amazing.
Yeah, I was like, this is.
Yeah.
It felt so pure and so real. And I was like, this is incredible.
Yeah. What you just said, like how nothing, like everything is forward. That's kind of been the goal from the start, which I love because it stayed. We've stuck to that. Just that, like, every part is intentional. Like, there's few. One thing that Blake says is he says there's few ingredients, but each ingredient is vital.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
So you can like hear and feel everything. There's nothing like.
Yeah.
There's no like added energy that's not that you can't actually hear, if that makes sense. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love the vibe of it.
Thanks.
Okay, so Abbie or Oscar, something that's inspiring you right now.
I would say I've been reading the same Rick Rubin book. And the way I've taken it, I think I've had this thought about creativity in music and anything that's creative. Like Sylvie is a creation of me and my wife. Mm-hmm. She is part of me, but ultimately she's the Lord's. Me, I steward her for X amount of time and help her shape her, and I think each child has their individual like parenting style. And I think from a creative standpoint, as a producer, songwriter, it's like each song is the same. Yep. When I view the song it's like it's not mine but his, and my job is stewarding the song. So it actually removes any type of like holding on to control of the song, and my job is just to manage and move it according to what the song needs. Yeah. So it talks about in the book about like it's like first of all, creativity is not inward but an outward expression. Some songs I've been in songwriting sessions or in places that I'm like, wow, that felt besides myself. Yeah. And it's part of the awareness. I'm like, I think if you are open to the Lord, He's always given us ideas. He's always given us concepts. He's always given us melodies. He's always given us what if this creative thing. And I think even from outside of a musical standpoint, it's like someone who's a lawyer, someone who's in any field can have that same creative mind. Like Lord, I remember we were in New York one time and me and my brother were having a conversation, and there's a guy that was from NYU, he's a professor, and he's like, I pray every single year when I get my student's name, and I shape my class, my semester according to what I feel from the Lord. Wow. And I'm like, and we have a concept at home where we say the fear of the Lord is that everything matters. So if I have the concept that every interaction I have today, every person that I meet, when I see my daughter and she's, everything matters to the Lord, and it's my job is not to be in my head but to be in my heart. Yeah. And to fully embrace it because it's a gift from God. Yeah. Yep. I'm like, I think some of the best songs come from there.
Yeah. Man, I love that. Well, there's who says I'm gonna steal someone's phrasing, but like the line between sacred and secular. Have you guys heard that phrase before? I forget who says that.
I don't know.
Shoot.
But I know what you're saying.
But I love what you're saying because that gets rid of that for us to go. God can only speak to me when it's about worship or something creative on the creative side, but God can be speaking throughout the entirety of our lives.
I want to add something also, like even working in this album, and even we led worship, this past Sunday. One thing that is so beautiful is like you will never get those moments back. Those people that are sitting there won't be sitting in the same spots. You won't be singing the same song at the same time, and so it's like fully given your 100% in the moment. You know, and I think that's what we did in this album. Also, like we were also intentional, and I really encourage all the worship leaders and everyone. It's like, you only have that moment once, and it's better to just give it off for the Lord. And it's just like, man, just take it like that, and then it impacts people, and whatever, that sacrifice that you give is just going to penetrate to people's hearts and minds. And so, I just encourage everyone to do that.
Yeah.
Just, man, you only got one life, and it's better to just give it 100% for the Lord and just run for it. Yeah.
Good.
It talks about that in the book. I recommend people. Yeah.
That's good. And we're back to the book. I need to read it.
It's so good.
Really good book.
That's great.
One thing we've talked about this a lot recently. The thing of the Lord is always speaking, and there's always creativity to be gleaning from.
Yep.
I remember Bill Johnson said one time, he actually probably says it a lot, but I heard him years ago say, we don't need more of God's presence, we need more awareness of it, because he's everywhere and he's in everything if you're looking for him. And so, I think even to the question for me, where am I finding inspiration? I strive to find it in everything,
Love it.
When you asked the question, I was thinking what have I been finding inspiration in recently? I've been finding inspiration in whatever moment I'm in, honestly. I remember recently my brother has a band, and we were at his show, and I was just standing there listening to the music, and I was and they're also just incredibly good. Little Image. Everyone go listen to Little Image.
Hey, the plug.
The plug. But, just living in that moment very presently. And then even on a practical note, just to encourage creatives, like Gabe was saying, to encourage worship leaders and creatives, you don't just have to listen to worship music.
Yeah.
I think that's such a freeing, obviously there's a line, but it's that line, where is the line between sacred and secular? And I think just even this album was so inspired by several indie artists that I am very inspired by their melodies and their lyrics and so I think just having the freedom to listen to more than just Upper Room, finding what inspires you, even sound wise, past the words or past the concept, what inspires you melodically and what's happening with the chords that gets you. So I don't know, I encourage people to listen to lots,
Yeah, totally.
There's
because
so
music,
much beauty
music is from God.
Yes.
And as humans, we can distort it or twist it a little bit.
Totally.
But still, that creativity is from Him.
Yeah.
And we get the ability as worship leaders, Christian creatives, to listen to that and go, actually, I'm going to use some of that, and then push people back to a focus on God.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's
great. And we can still keep it simple. Back to the this album is very stripped. You can still keep it simple and have it be fresh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which I think is what a lot of the secular world is doing well with music, is they are ever inspired, and it doesn't ever feel like the same thing, you know? So
there's a soul to music.
There's a soul to it, yeah.
And I think it's that's what we want to be so careful about, because we could have just done let's do the live worship thing.
Yeah.
Or let's have you an acoustic and just have you play, and it is simple.
Which is beautiful,
but there's this intentional simplicity to things.
Yes.
And that's what I wanted to capture the soul of it. Mm-hmm. Even all the strings are real.
Yeah.
It's look, they're not perfectly in tune, all of them, and it's there's a lot more work to that.
Yeah.
But I was you feel it from when I listened to it the other day from top to bottom. I was oh my gosh, even I remember we got all the masters back, and I was we gotta take away 0.1 second of this one little part to make sure the whole, it feels each song can live on its own and the whole album can live on its own. So it's there's so much thought and intention.
All those little decisions to keep or take, or
the 1%.
The 1%. Someone told me, we finished the album, and the guy Blake, which I really appreciate him. I was he's worked in Christian and in secular world, and he's I don't stop working until I can't. And I was what? He's I don't stop until I have to turn it in. He's because he read this article about the swim team in London, that they were a B. They were pretty bad. And then they got a new coach, and the coach is okay, we're at 90%, but it's he's can we give 1% more every day? 2-3 years later, they've won awards and they're killing it.
Amazing.
So he's I want to fight. He told me, I want to fight for the 1%. you know, if it means being up at 2 a.m. and having to tune the vocals, which we did, you know, there's a couple days that happened, but like listening back to it, I'm like, it's worth it in the long run.
Yeah.
It's like let's don't stop until we can't do anything else.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, because you're not doing it for your own. It's not your own thing. You're stewarding.
Yes.
It's literally what you just said. So
Yeah.
if I'm a steward of this song, I don't want to just. To steal from the Bible, I don't want to bury it. I want to actually like invest and pour into it, not because it's my thing, but because it's God's and I'm the steward.
Yes.
It was funny because once we finished, I told my wife, I was like, I feel a little like sad, like in the most realist way. I was like, because it's like, it felt like, which I haven't experienced this, is whenever your kid goes to college, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, you did the best that you can as a parent.
Oh, listen, I can't even think about
Yeah,
that.
You know, and it's like
Too scared.
It's like you sowed all the seeds that you could. You know, you probably made mistakes here and there, and it's like it's their time to kind of go. It's a
That's
seed.
crazy that you felt that way, because I have too. I just realized it the other day. It's like this. It was back to Rick Rubin, but
I love
he
it. You should just be here.
He's just
Just bring him in.
But he talks about how like a dream it's limitless. Like when you're holding a dream, your imagination and your creativity and your heart can hold things, and they can go anywhere internally. Once you make it real, there's limits to it.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying. And so it's almost like, and this is like, I think I relate to what you're saying. Like I felt this almost grief, and it's so exciting, and I'm like so stoked for people to get it in their ears and their homes. But it's also like, it's finished.
Yeah.
Like we did it, and it's so beautiful and amazing. But also like the dream, like we did the dream now. And so now the dream's just out here living in the world.
So true.
And it's made into something. It's not just like my ideas or our ideas. It's like,
It's concrete.
it's concrete.
It
and
is.
it's so, like, there's so many emotions to that.
Totally. Concrete as a record, but not concrete when you lead it.
Yes,
And the moments
totally.
that you're
There's
gonna
so
have,
much
and there's
like
still so much fluidity
evolving
and so
that
much
can
that God's
happen.
going to do in it,
Yeah.
which is really
Yes.
exciting. But
yeah.
guys, thanks for sitting down and chatting with us. I really appreciate it. Hanging out with us, eating
Yeah.
tacos. It's
Thank
been a
you.
really fun day. So
Thanks
appreciate
for
you
having
guys.
us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.